One of the things that I have become passionate about or that I have really embraced, I guess I should say, is just actual real life. Us just living our life instead of in the fast lane, just knowing that the little moments really do matter and slowing down can bring us so much peace, just that rest. And it is such a great way to be able to connect with our kids when it comes to homeschooling. Today's guest, Leigh Martino, has written an amazing book that is all about this and not just about slowing down just in your personal life, but how does it relate to education and our children? And so I am excited for you to slow down for a moment, keep those earbuds popped in, maybe grab a cup of coffee or whatever your favorite drink is, curl up and give this a listen. And I think that you're going to walk away with some amazing encouragement as well as some really tactical tips on how to approach your homeschool day.
Welcome to Little by Little Homeschool Podcast, where you'll learn tips and strategies that will empower you to home educate your children. I'm Leigh Nguyen, a homeschool mom of over 12 years, which includes 2 graduates. When I started homeschooling, I was pretty much on my own and was desperate for encouragement and help. My mission is to be a source of encouragement and help to you. Whether you are just beginning your homeschool journey or you're deep into the homeschool lifestyle, Little by Little Homeschool wants to help you stay the course because all the time you are investing into your children is completely worth it. If you're ready to take your homeschool to new levels, keep listening.
Welcome to today's podcast episode. I feel so blessed to be able to sit down right now and have a conversation with Leigh, and you get to join me. So Leigh, thank you for joining me here today on this episode.
Leigh, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Me too. I'm thrilled to be able to meet you through the camera here, but I would like to start out just for those that maybe aren't familiar with who you are, and maybe even if they are, just kind of revive their memory about yourself. Can you share a little bit about you, yourself, your homeschool journey?
Sure. Okay. So my family and we live in Central Florida. My husband, I have 4 kids, and we have always homeschooled them. My oldest is 14 and my youngest are a set of twins. They are 10. And so we have been homeschooling, like I said, since the beginning. My husband and I talked about homeschooling since before we had children. I have always been involved in the world of education. And when we moved here to Central Florida, I was looking for a place to call home, in the education world. And I really couldn't find anything or a place that I thought I would be able to thrive. Things have since changed, but it was back then that we started talking about, let's create this environment ourselves. Like, let's homeschool our kids, And so we had been talking about it for a while. And then when my oldest became school age, we were just like, oh, we must be homeschoolers now, And that's how the journey kind of began for us.
That is so neat that you were talking about it. And I'm hearing more and more from young couples. And even those who don't even have kids yet, they're like, someday I want to homeschool my kids. And I think it's such a neat conversation. I think that it's missing. It's one of those things, before you get married, you have premarital counseling and all these questions. I feel like that should be added to the questions, right? Like, how do you want to educate your kids? And so it's so neat. I love that you just kind of were like, oh, I guess we're doing this.
Yeah. And I think that most people don't realize that there are options, because I think they just sort of think, I'll just do it. What I did or what my parents did, but nowadays there are really a lot of different options for education.
You're so right. Because back when my kids were little, I didn't think about it at all. But now there are options. And just in the past couple of years, just with the huge increase of homeschoolers, I feel like it's almost impossible to get through your life at this point and never meet a homeschooler.
I know, it's so true.
I feel like a lot of people, if you're out in the world, even if you're just at the grocery store, you hang at the grocery store for a while, you're going to run into some homeschoolers at some point. So yeah,
that is very true.
You have written a new book, and it's entitled The Joy of Slow, Restoring Balance and Wonder to Homeschool Learning. And in it, you encourage moms to find the joy in homeschooling their children. Now, as homeschool moms, we can get so busy, right? We fill up our days, and we don't think we can slow down and fully educate our children. So what does the idea of slow in education mean to you?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think I would say that it incorporates a lot of different things. And would be a combination of the way we approach education and learning. So when I talk about slow in respect to education and learning, I'm talking about adopting a meaningful practice of building deep roots more than wide roots, So whether you are letting learning unfold naturally, whether you are using curriculum, it's that valuing of deeper understanding over shallow mastery. So you're willing to slow down to allow for that to happen. And you have that healthy respect for building knowledge, because you're not just looking for the right answer. You understand that the process of learning, like processes, take time to unfold. So inside of that, you have to decide to do fewer things because you're deciding to do fewer things better. It's not about doing everything. And then I also think it's about honoring a child's interests and respecting the time that it takes to really cultivate the imagination, develop authentic skills, do work that's meaningful, and really connect to it. Like there's so much that we could possibly learn. There's so much that this world has to offer. So we're willing to even tackle school subjects with dynamism, flexibility, and really linger with the material that we're interacting with a little bit longer. And I think inherently inside of that, we're saying we want to redefine success and broaden our understanding of what constitutes a rich learning life, because rigor and difficulty are not necessarily the same thing as true and useful learning. So I think it's about the way that we look at education. And I think it's also about the space that we create in the day for healthy margins between each activity or every item on the to-do list, for rest, for ordinary mundane living, for surprise, for adventure. But it's creating that sense, that space in the day that adds a sense of peace and a margin for adventure. And that really guards against the tendency to overschedule, to form rigid expectations, to lead from a place of control because you're just fearful about a child's academic development. But you're willing to just welcome the patient pursuits that I like to say that replenish the soul. For that's going to be something different for everybody. But it's finding like the beauty in the ordinary everyday rhythms as well, not necessarily the adventure outside the home, but just the normal everyday stuff. And then I think the last thing I would say is that it's the connection that we build with those that we live with. So it's a decision to get out of the rat race that determines how we should spend our time or what should be important to living, and then committing ourselves to growing alongside our loved ones. And I think that's how we preserve wonder for every child, regardless of their age. Yeah, we are striving for balance imperfectly when it comes to a child's growth and development, but it's prioritizing that strong sense of connection in the family.
Okay, we could probably end the episode right now, but we're not going to. That was so good. I'm just like, I'm over here scribbling and taking notes because it's just so good. So obviously the book is going to be so good too. So I love that. And I think that all that you were saying, I think parents are just so much more open to this, and we're starting to really look at school versus education. Education can occur in so many different ways, and we don't have to be dictated. Our day doesn't have to be dictated by a bell or a clock or this time. And that fact that you're talking about the deep roots over wide roots, and in school, we probably all had it. I'm assuming you went to public school or private school or kind of, that similar kind of philosophy. And it was just, you do science for X amount of time, the bell rings and you have to go to the next one. And you're just kind of scattered with a lot of different information, but just not getting like super deep.
Yeah. And then it's also like, even just inside of this one subject, let's make sure we cover all 50 topics that are presented in the scope and sequence. And it's like, I don't know. I mean, I can pick any grade, any year, and go back and think if I remember all of those topics. And I don't. I only remember the ones I really connected with, So it's just, we use the breath to masquerade as knowledge, but I don't think that's really realistic or healthy for that matter.
I agree. And as my kids, and as they are older, and I personally had to let go of this and my preconceived ideas and notions of what school had to look like. And I believe it was my second born who is headstrong and an entrepreneur now. And so he just kind of thought outside of the box, and he would just dive in so deep. So I'm just thinking about the subject of science, and say you're going to study animals, there's just so you can't study everything, and a lot of textbooks and a lot of even homeschool curriculum, not knocking the homeschool curriculum, will just have a lot. But if there you have a child that wants to dive in deep into just one set, so he at some point had moved to a house. There was a pond there, and we had no friends around. And he became friends with all the frogs and toads. It sounds kind of weird, but I mean, he was like 10 years old. And so that was just, he immersed himself, and he's 19 now. He can probably tell you still tons of things about frogs and toads. I had to let go of him not knowing everything about all the lions and tigers and bears, but it was okay that he knew so much about those and could have conversations with adults about them.
Yeah, that's such a good point, because I think as parents, the first thing, a lot of times I know when parents hear me say that, the inside they're bubbling over and they're like, but what about the gaps? What about the stuff that you don't know? Don't you have to at least give some sort of general overview? And I think we have to let that go a little bit, because we all have those gaps. We all do, even adults. The key is how we interpret them. And the reality is that if your son decided to go on and be an animal biologist that only dealt with like elephants and lions and those kinds of animals, he'd have to fill in those gaps. And he could do that. Yep. There's nothing that says that he missed out, he missed the boat. And so I think, I think we can all admit that in our adult lives, that's what happens. That's what we do. You decide the gaps you want to close, you decide the gaps you want to fill, but we all have them. But to just say that because the gaps exist, you are therefore not smart, or you are therefore not successful, I think that's the problem.
Right. Just thinking about adults. So even talking about that animal biologist that specifically focuses on, we don't say that he is not smart because he doesn't know how to play Mozart, or that he cannot paint like Picasso or something. We were like, wow, we respect the fact that there's that niche. And when kids, we feel like they have to be so broad in it. But let's go back to you just talking about the beauty of the everyday and just the slow of that. And I think we miss out on that, especially I think with social media, and everything makes us feel so like we have to be so fast, or missing out if we're not running around like crazy homeschool moms to everything.
Exactly. And a lot of times when families, even no matter how they school, whenever you talk to families and they talk about just feeling too busy, wanting to slow down, what's one of the first things they do? They look at the busyness of their lives. They look at the activity level. They look at the amounts of time they're spending on social media. They look at, like, there's something about bringing it back to just the ordinary, everyday, at home stuff. Like, there's beauty in that, and there's purpose in that. And that's, I don't think when the ideas of slow, it's not about making everything seem like a grand adventure. Adventures are great, but there's beauty in just the ordinary, everyday slowness of life. And I think we have to make ourselves live there, for those of us who are so used to the fast forward, because, and it's the same reason why people take vacations, right? Like, you have to, your body needs rest. Your body needs the opposite of slow in order to thrive. The opposite of fast. Did I say the opposite of slow? Your body needs it all. We need balance.
Yes. Yeah. And it's okay to have, especially those quiet mornings of kids kind of coming down, and you sit and you read and you just kind of enjoy the day. To me, honestly, those are the memories that I hold the most. That and maybe some field trips is what I remember most about all the years of homeschooling. So let's go back a little bit to the education. And we hear all the time as homeschool moms, those that are listening, I know they hear it all the time, that we need to personalize our child's education. So how can we actually incorporate our children's passions and their interests into homeschooling?
I think we can do that in two different ways. I think the first way is to make it the school. A lot of times we look at interests and passions as like the extra. And I'm like, but you already have the buy-in from the child. Make that the school. So I think we do that by making space for those kinds of things, sending the message to your child like, no, I value this. This is important. So the same way I'm carving out time in the day to read aloud a book or to go through this math curriculum with you, I'm carving out the day and saying, yeah, let's do this. I can see that you have this interest. Here's some time to do it. Like, we've built this into our schedule. And, I know inside of that, there's questions like, well, what do I do during that time as a parent? What's my role? And I always talk about just being a good mentor, and that you can't predicate what that looks like for, just a blanket statement. That's going to be dependent on you and the child. But figuring out, so maybe you're sitting with a kid and brainstorming some solutions to a problem they're having. Maybe you're listening to them read aloud the novel that they're writing. Maybe you're just taking them to the bird center because they really need to see raptors because they're really interested in that. Or maybe you're helping them source some wood to build a birdhouse. Like maybe a mentor is going to do so many different things, but it's just giving the time, energy, and attention to saying, no, I value your interest and I know that you're learning. So this actually is a part of what we are calling school. I think a lot of us are afraid to do that. And then the other thing is to really not be afraid to figure out where those connection points happen. Like let's say you're using a curriculum and the curriculum says devote 2 weeks to the study of this topic. And there really is you're okay, it's fine. You're learning it, but there's no real deep connection. So maybe you just wrap it up in a week and move on to something else. And then, the things that you really find connection in, that you could go way deeper than what the curriculum is presenting. Who cares if the curriculum says 2 weeks? Go a month, go a year, connect, figure out where those connection points are because they are there. And I think we assume sometimes that they're not because we're not willing to explore it and explore where that connection point could possibly be. Because a lot of it's not necessarily just topic focused. You're like, oh, my kid doesn't like archaeology, so, they're not going to be interested in this. Well, are you sure? Well, what touches the field of archaeology? What does that even entail? I just feel like we have to give things a little bit more thought to figure out where even like connection points could happen, because sometimes they're obscure, sometimes they're surprising. And so we need to really engage our kids in conversation to explore that a little bit, because their ideas sometimes are so much better than mine. So.
Yeah, I hear from moms often that will say, especially if they're pulling their kids from school and their kids are very used to it, and them as a parents are very used to being introduced. This is what you have to be quote unquote interested in right now. Mm-hmm. This is the study that we're doing in science or social studies for the younger grades. And parents will say, I don't know what my kids' interests are. Do you have some suggestions for how they can start to kind of observe and learn and figure that out together with their child?
Yeah, for sure. I would say if you're in that place, spend a week just observing them and observe how it is they like to use their time, what kinds of things they like to play, even the kinds of energy and attention they put to arguing with their siblings over something like the fact that they're arguing over this toy or arguing over who gets to, do what in this game means that there's interest there. So sometimes I think I would suggest just spend a week observing and don't even presuppose what you're going to see in that observation, but just take a week, jot it down. Like, oh, they are consuming this content. Oh, they are reading this book. Oh, they are playing this game. Oh, they decided to go ride their bike. Oh, I think it's just step back and observe, because the interests are there. And I think sometimes with older children, when it's younger children, you can easily see interest because of the choices that they make in relation to play. And when children start to become older, I don't think that changes. I think that the play of an older elementary child or an adolescent or even an adult are still very much tied to the things that they want to do and the things that they're interested in. So I would just say, take some time to just observe.
Very good advice. It's sometimes hard, especially when we're pulled out from the school system and we feel like time is of the essence and we can't waste. That would be a waste of time is how we feel. And it's not a waste of time. And that can be a part of the deschooling process for all of you, is just to take at least a week or even more and just let them do things. And I like that point about the older kids, because you think, well, how am I going to figure out their interest? Because little kids, you can figure out they're playing, with cars or dolls or they're building things or they're wrecking things or they want to be in the kitchen with you. There's something. And then sometimes with older kids, it's hard, especially when their time has been so consumed with school and then homework and maybe after school activities, and you pull them home and just kind of give them, they might not know what they're interested in. They might not know what they want to do.
They might not know because it's been the message that they've gotten for so long is that it doesn't matter. And so they're disconnected. And so sometimes you need to just like that deschooling process, like you said, just step outside of everything that you're calling school and just say, let's just be. And where do you want to go? What do you want to see? What do you want to do? What do you want to explore? And doing that alongside of them, because to be honest, a lot of adults don't know because they've been disconnected as well.
I completely agree. And we feel like we don't have the time, or we shouldn't waste. It would be a waste of time for us to go and pursue things, but pursue the garden that you maybe want to make, or the pottery class that you want to take, or you see a free course at the library, or something you want to learn something online. Go and do it. And I think that's a great example to kids, especially older kids, to see that mom and dad are still pursuing interest in learning new things, that there isn't a limit. There isn't like you reached this point and you've learned everything and now you're successful. There's a constant learning. And with the internet, it's never ending.
Exactly.
So day in and day out, homeschool moms are trying to keep up with education. And then they have all the responsibilities of the home and their motherhood. And we can very easily lose our spark. Why do you see joy as such a powerful element of a life-giving experience of the life we're creating at home with our families?
Leigh, I think it's because I believe that we're more likely to find joy when we're living a meaningful life, or when our lives are full of experiences that actually hold intrinsic value. So in the end, when I talk about slow is an effort to be more balanced. And that balance is going to be what helps us make better choices for ourselves and for our families that are both sensible and meaningful. So we can't necessarily go hunting for joy. We have to hunt for meaning. We have to align our lives to the things we find meaningful. We often put time, energy, resources, attention into things we don't even highly value. And then we never have time for the things we really care about. And we end up feeling really frustrated and tired because of it. There's a mismatch. And we have to be willing to do the work to make sure the alignment is there. We have to reflect. We have to eliminate the things and ideas that don't belong. We have to reprioritize time. Like, you can't say you highly value connection with your kids, but then when you dissect your life, you see that the real hours in a day are not put to that connection in the way that you want. Does television have to go? I don't know. Does social media have to go? Maybe. Busyness outside the home, activities up the wazoo. You have to be honest with yourself. And I believe that joy is an outcome of the experiences that hold intrinsic value. So we have to make sure that we know what we value.
So instead of just saying, oh, I need more joy, there's actually some work on the back end that needs to be done. The joy is the result. Is that what you're saying?
Joy is the result. Joy is waiting for you.
Yes. I love that. And we can often just get so just caught up in the day in and day out, and the keeping our kids alive, just the basics of that. And then we add in all of this curriculum and that we feel that we need to do. But maybe, as you're saying, we slow down and we look at their interests, and we don't feel like we have to have this whole stack of curriculum. Again, not knocking curriculum. It has it has its place. But when there's a line, I feel like you cut across at some point where that dictates and runs your day.
Yes.
As opposed to you as the homeschool mom running your day.
And that curriculum is supposed to be a tool that we use. And we end up, being thrown around every which way by the curriculum. It controls us, and that's not what it's supposed to be. And to be honest, when you even think that's not even how most curriculum is designed. It's the way it ends up being used, but that's not even in a lot of cases how it's designed. So you're right.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I hadn't thought of that, of it not being designed like that with the intention of it. I remember our math curriculum. It was great curriculum, really gave them a solid foundation. But if I was to do everything that the math curriculum said for 3 different kids in 3 different grades, that would have been our entire day. It would have cost me an arm and a leg, and it would have been super frustrating. But I had to learn, how can I pare down so that I can help them learn their math skills and learn their math facts and learn the different processes? What's the bare minimum that I need in order to do that?
Yeah. And sometimes the curriculum designers don't say, hey, we put 50 problems on a page, but you're not going to be failing if you don't do the 50 problems. Sometimes they don't necessarily spell that out. They have to put it there. They have to give you a lot so that different people can sometimes find a way in and find something to hold on to, or they have to present a whole lot of different styles or ways of explaining things. But that's for different reasons than than for you to be able to do it all. Use it as a tool to use it how you want,
Yeah. And just kind of, yeah, exactly. Make it whether, I mean, there were some years where, okay, there'd be maybe 50 problems for one lesson. And I would have them do that, but not all in one day, because I felt like I had to slow down because they weren't ready for the introduction of the next concept. So let's take a week to just work on these 50 or more, or not even do all of them. But then other times I was like, okay, they're ready for the next concept. So let's just do a couple of problems, a couple of review, a couple of the new ones, and then move on to the next one.
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah. So I like that point that you made of the slow. I drew arrows. I wrote slow, and then I drew an arrow to balance, and then I drew an arrow to better choices. Can you break that down a little bit more, of the slow leading to balance to better choices?
Yeah. So when I talk about balance, I have this visual image of a balance scale. And so it's like the scales that hang where, way you balance it is like so in order to, and the reason why I like thinking about that image, because it removes the image of, for me anyway, perfection. That balance scale is teetering. That balance scale is always changing, because you have to make choices sometimes. Okay, this doesn't belong on the scale anymore, so I'm going to take it off. Oh, that side, because I took this off, this got so heavy, too heavy. So let me make some better choices about maybe what's going to replace this, or what I have to take off over here. Like, it's always about choices. And we want to make meaningful choices to keep that balance in check. And so, yes, slow is about finding balance. It's a paradox of balance. It's never one thing. It's choosing the right things at the right time for the best result. And so it's a combination of slowing down and accelerating. It's a combination of a lot of opposite things, probably. But I think that we have to be willing to enjoy the ride and enjoy the process, that imperfect process of growing and finding balance with your family, because you're focused on making those meaningful choices. No one is going to start out from the beginning and get it perfectly. I don't really think that's the point. We learn through the growth. We learn through the process of becoming adults, of becoming, whoever it is and whatever it is we're becoming.
And every year of homeschool is different.
Yes.
And we I don't know if we forget that, or we just don't know it. No one's, so I'm telling everybody, I'm giving you permission for this homeschool year to be different than last, and the next one to be different. And there might be some years, if your kids are packed in tight and close, or or you have young ones and you're like, well, we're just home because there's nap time. We're home every afternoon. It's just kind of the same thing for years. But as kids get older, I felt like every year sometimes could be very drastically different, and making choices as to how do we spend our time, what activities do we get involved in, how do we spend our finances on those activities. And like you're saying, something comes off, and then I like that picture of that. I was thinking, to me, I'm like going like way back to probably, I don't even know, like, 1,000 years ago, they would use it and more. We use those scales. And that's a really good word picture of thinking that sometimes we have to take something off and have to rebalance things, and it's okay. And I think
it's okay. Yeah. And expect the change. Yeah. Like, don't be surprised by it or upset by it. Expect that things will constantly be evolving and changing and growing, but that's a good thing.
It is. I like that. Expect the change. And I think that is a good way of looking at it, to assume that there's going to be change. Otherwise, when we think there isn't going to be change, we get upset. When we think that there is maybe going to be some change, and it doesn't sit right with us. But work through the change, and this has been so encouraging. I'm like gung ho and all ready, and I got to get myself a copy of the book too. So thank you. I love it. Love it.
Welcome.
So can you let the listener know, where can they connect with you? Where can they purchase your book? Where do you share more about everything that you've been talking about?
Sure. So the title of the book, again, is The Joy of Slow, Restoring Balance and Wonder to Homeschool Learning, and it's available wherever books are sold. There's also in different versions, hardcover, Kindle, and audiobook. I had the joy of being able to record the audiobook, but you can definitely reach me, contact me, visit me on my website, lesliemartino.com. And on social media, I'm most active on Instagram, which is Leslie M. Martino.
Perfect. I will put all of those links in the show notes. And that's awesome that you did the audiobook. Was that fun to do?
It was so much fun. I wasn't expecting to enjoy it as much. I was really worried about talking so much, but but I ended up having a really great time. Yeah.
Oh, good. I think that's perfect because I think as homeschool moms, we like to maybe listen to things as the listener right now is listening on a podcast. And it's easy for us to be able to listen, take in some great information, learn as we are maybe washing the dishes or taking a walk or folding laundry or weeding the garden. I don't know, something, whatever we're doing that we can just kind of pop those in and listen. So thank you. Thank you for this conversation. And we'll put those links again in the show notes so the listener can go ahead and connect with you. Thank you for joining me today, Leslie.
Thank you, Leigh.
So how has your homeschool year changed? Are you embracing that change? Are you accepting it? Are you saying it's okay, leaning into it and balancing your day? Now, I know as of recording this podcast episode, I had not gotten Leslie's book, but I have since, and it's so good. And so I want to encourage you to check out her book. And like I said in the recording with her, that maybe it's easier for you to listen to it on Audible. Go ahead and do that too. But all of the links will be in the show notes. And I just so appreciated this conversation. And I really hope that it helps to make just one of those small changes in your day. Maybe give your husband this episode to listen to so that he kind of knows what page that you're on or the page that you're turning to. Have a really good day, friend, and I will see you back here on Little by Little Homeschool Podcast really soon.
Thank you for listening, friend. I'd love to connect with you more. You can find social media links in the show notes and share this episode with a friend who could use a boost to her homeschool. See you back here real soon.